Daniel Horowitz is here. He's from the podcast Conservative Review, which you should listen to and subscribe and rate with 5 stars, I think is the appropriate number.
5 stars is the appropriate number of stars, yes.
Okay. All right. Daniel, welcome.
Well, it's great to be with you, and I'll take 5 stars any day of the week.
Any day. Okay. So, Daniel, do we need a national divorce? What would that look like? Or do we just need braver Americans? Do we need braver, I don't know, constitutional Americans?
Well, Glenn, think about this. How do you bridge the divide between people who think a man is a woman's a man, a criminal is a victim's a criminal. If you don't wear a mask, you're a murderer, but I'll let murderers out of prison at the same time using that very virus as a pretext. You don't have the right to have free, unrestricted movement unless you do as we say with your body. But if you crash our border, man, you could go to all corners of the country anytime you want. These are not light and transient causes. This is not a matter of one issue. Frankly, King George never did this. King George never demanded we cover our mouths. King George didn't have men in female bathrooms. I mean, those issues were really very economic. It was over taxes. We have never had this ever before. It used to be politics was 10% of our life, and the other 90, we all have to eat, we all have to drink. We kind of do the same things. We like the same sports teams, and we could live together harmoniously. Now everything is political to the point of literally your life, even before liberty. So we now have a scenario where they could force you to take experimental therapies that, showed that they have a lot of problems, but you don't even have the right to try a Nobel Prize-winning drug. This is how divided it is. So what I would argue is we already have a national divorce, except it's one-sided. So, for example, you asked me to define what it looks like, and I'll define what it looks like, literally a divorce, which doesn't mean you part ways. You have certain amicable agreements when it comes to custody of the kids and certain assets, and so we'll have the military, we'll have Social Security. It won't be perfectly 2 different countries. But what I think we need to do is make the red states that we allegedly already supposedly should have control over exactly like the blue states are. And when Trump was president, they didn't tolerate anything. Even something like immigration, which is very much within the purview of the federal government, they harbored illegal alien sex offenders, and they actually in New York criminalized the enforcement and cooperation and transmitting any information to federal immigration agents. So my point is there is no reason we can't go in the red states where we have 4-1, 5-1 majorities in some of them in the legislative bodies and say this is immoral, illogical, illegal, it's unconstitutional. It is not happening here. And frankly, if we ever get the presidency back, that is what the blue states have already done and will do anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back down to state power. I don't care what you do in California, but you're not going to charge me for it. I'm not bailing you out. I'm not living there. If that's what you want to do, then that's fine. But don't bring it to my state. And I don't know why we are not defending the Constitution. We're arguing about all of these crazy things that have nothing to do with the Constitution and in many ways are in violation of the Constitution. We should, how many, I'd like to know, really, honestly, I really think we should begin conversations with people like this. Can you talk to me about the Bill of Rights? Is there anything in the Bill of Rights that you disagree with? If they say, yeah, I disagree with a lot of them, you know who you're dealing with. If they say, no, not really, maybe the Second Amendment, okay, all right, well, we can talk about the Second Amendment later. Let's just start talking politics now and the policies. As soon as they start talking about the policies, you say, I thought you weren't against the Bill of Rights. Because I haven't moved. They have. They no longer believe in the Bill of Rights. And you can't come together if you don't believe in the most important foundational document in our country.
And really the most important right as defined by Blackstone is to walk in locomotion, status quo, without government acting against your body affirmatively in any way. And the left always championed bodily autonomy in the courts really for almost 100 years, that you have the right to kill a baby. You have the right to a positive benefit to get access to physician-assisted suicide, all these cases we had. And now suddenly you can't even have "don't tase me, bro." Hey, look, you got your vaccine, you got your mask, you can do what you want, just don't force me to do it. And now you have the ACLU as the lead plaintiff in South Carolina, not only not defending your right to breathe in school, but actually defending your alleged right to force the other guy not to breathe. And that's the point. We don't shove things on them. We're not demanding everyone take 5,000 IUs of vitamin D and ivermectin prophylactically, which actually would probably stop the spread even more. Hey, look, we want to do it. Just allow us to do it. Don't stop us from doing it. You could do it. But they won't allow it. So right now we don't have a national divorce. It's more like an abusive husband who has violated the social that compact, and we just have to evacuate ourselves from it. And again, Madison's design has given us that design. I don't want to hear about, we'll win back Congress or something with a narrow rhino majority. Republicans have 19 states where they not only have the trifecta, but they have it with super majorities. But here we have, let me give you an example. There's this 16-year-old girl we're all talking about in Wyoming who was handcuffed for not wearing a mask. Now, Glenn, all I'm asking is that in a state like Wyoming, where there's a 28-2 GOP majority in the Senate, there's 2 Democrats there, that we could abide by and live by the same degree of post-constitutional liberty that we had on February 2020. Is that too much to ask? And yet we don't really have that. The red states are a little better. I mean, I know.
So why is that? Why is that? Why is it that Wyoming, of all places, doesn't stand up?
Well, let me give you an example of what we just dealt with in Arkansas. A similar dynamic. We couldn't even get a compromise bill immediately passed to allow an opt-out for weekly PCR testing. That was New York's line in the sand a month ago. So we can't even hold the line that New York was pushing a month ago or 2 months ago. And that's because you look at a small state like Arkansas, overwhelmingly people voted for Trump. But at the end of the day, it's not Republican and Democrat, conservative, liberal, right and left. It's one oligarchy, this corporate government monopoly, and you got Tyson's, you got J.B. Hunt, and you got Walmart there, and they get what they want, and the governor's bought out by them. So you got all these Republicans, they get money from Big Pharma, from the Chamber of Commerce. They'll joust very broadly on life and guns. I'm pro-life, I'm pro-gun, in a very broad way. But when it comes to the issues that matter most to our lives, when they matter, at the time they matter, look carefully, and you'll see both parties are awfully close to each other.
You used light and transient causes earlier. The second line in the second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence, after the life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, says that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That's no longer happening. That when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish and institute a new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such a form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. And accordingly, all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. So it says here, it explains human nature, that most of us are silent because it's still okay. And I think that changes once the economy really is hit. I think once people start to realize, wait a minute, I'm losing my job, my money is worthless, and I think it's probably too late by that point.
Well, I mean, this is why John Adams always said you have to nip the shoots of arbitrary power in the bud. They got a bad rap at the time, the Patriots, because it really wasn't that bad. A tiny little tax there, what's the big deal? But they understood that if you wait until it is a big deal, it's too late. And I think that's the problem. I'll never forget a couple of years ago, actually right before COVID, our mutual friend and colleague Steve Dace and I did a show together, and we talked about just retiring. I said, look, I'm always happier when I just tune it out, go on vacation, and it doesn't bother me. But that was before March 2020. Now you can't run away from it. They control every aspect of our lives, and our health, our what we do with our bodies. It's terrible. The emails I'm getting from show listeners that they can't get proper treatment. People that got vaccinated and they get very sick, and we have to find all sorts of ways to get them treatment in a first world country like America. This is something that I think we can't live through. And Glenn, if we're just going to relegate those words of the Declaration to some sort of museum, some mosaic of history, then they're just hollow. They're meaningless. And we're not asking for a civil war. We want to avoid that. And I think a lot of people forget the Revolutionary War was catalyzed really by the body closest to the people. It was the state legislatures that formed those committees of correspondence. I think we need to make state legislatures great again, and that will make red states red again. And, we'll simply have red states that will behave the same way the blue states behave, and we'll have a degree of self-sorting, and that will be healthier for everyone.
Yeah, it will be. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. God bless. It's important that you listen to Daniel Horowitz. He's really, really smart and really buttoned up on these issues. Blaze Podcast, Conservative Review. Get it wherever you get your podcast, Daniel Horowitz.